Hello, friends. So I am so happy. I could hardly get myself to go to sleep last night because I wanted to keep working on this. I was given these two towels that were made out of recycled cotton sari fabric, and I adore them. I adore them so much. And just having it hang in my bathroom was just not enough. I just wanted more time with it. So what I did is each of them were like double this size. So I pulled out the stitching and split them in half to make four panels that I'm sewing together into a scarf that I think I'm going to wear every day. So what I'm doing is I'm just closing back up that that middle part where I cut it open, and I am doing that just by they already had sort of a crease where they were folded, so I'm just sewing them together down those sides to close that back up, and then I'll just connect them at their edges here, and voila. So what I think is really interesting is, so for about the past I'd say since, let's see, so 2002, so about the past 20 years, I've been trying to get my life. I realized that my life was really off track at that point when I was 22. So I had graduated from college. I had gone into school thinking I was wanting to do something in politics, and I was coming from like a very conservative evangelical Christian background. And then I um, I went into college thinking I was doing something in politics. I was like very involved with um, junior Republicans. I went to this thing called Presidential Classroom my senior year. And I thought I was really into the idea of like the American dream, and my exposure had been very narrow. A lot of yeah, just controlling what information I had access to, because I went to a Christian school and the only places we spent time were school or church. So um, I really was mesmerized by this sort of glorification of America. And I had always been a person who wanted to help other people. I had like done a bunch of missions trips. I thought Mother Teresa was amazing. I wanted to be a missionary, have an orphanage, all these things. Um, so I had a really big, like, white savior complex, as they call it. Um, and I went off to college, and it was my first time in a secular environment, and it was very overwhelming. And I had also known since about the seventh grade that I was also attracted to girls. And in that world that I was living in, that was like a absolute no-no. And I had decided that that was like, well, it's interesting. I spent the first part of seventh grade, I was really into reading books about saints and martyrs and missionaries who went and risked their lives. And I had realized that all of these people had gained so much spiritually from these really challenging situations. Their lives were really uncomfortable, and that a lot of that led to more spiritual development. And I really wanted more spiritual development, but realized that my life had been pretty cushy. So I started praying every day to be made uncomfortable. And then I realized that I was attracted to girls. So sometimes I think I sort of asked for that because that certainly did make my life more uncomfortable. So I just took on the perspective that that was like my cross to bear is how I used to say it, and that it was just going to be my thing that was hard, and that I would give it to God, and that it would, be like a mechanism for having more faith and trust and dependence on God. So I never thought I would pursue it or that I would live my life that way. Because the way that I was brought up, it was not like the fact that you were attracted to someone wasn't the problem. It was if you acted on it. So I just was convinced I would just not act on it, that I would just stay single and be like a missionary or something. And then I don't really know how the whole political thing happened, but that happened in my later high school years. And I went off to college thinking that's what I would do. And then I went into these classes at this secular university. I took American history, and it was like totally not what I had been taught. And I had this first year seminar, and my facilitator was a queer person who really just changed my whole trajectory, because she had so much information that I had never had access to. And once I started digesting the information, I was like, oh, everything I was taught was really controlled. So that started. Why did I even start talking about this? Oh, I know why. That started a whole just like spiraling, undoing of so many things. And got to the point where when I graduated from college, I was still trying to figure out like what to do with the fact that I was queer. And I had gone through several really terrifying experiences with the church, and realized that I didn't align with it anymore, not because of their stance on queer people, but really because I had come to know and love so many people who were outside of the church, and really just felt that any system that said that there was only one way of thinking that could get you to, be loved by God, or that if you weren't a part of it, that you were going to be internally damned. Like, I just couldn't be a part of that. So, um, I was just searching so much, and I had considered, I was ended up being a linguistics major because I really loved math and language and other cultures, and it kind of combines all of that. And there's no real jobs for linguists, except for I got recruited by the Army to be a cryptolingual analyst, which was really exciting to me because they have an excellent language institute. But I realized I was going to have to be like a part of the Army. I was going to be a part of military stuff that would have people killed. So I decided not to do that. And then I was just pretty lost. I had gotten into something called Teach for America, and I had gotten accepted to a master's in social work and divinity joint program through Princeton Theological Seminary and Rutgers University. So I had those options, but neither of them really were like me. Um, but I just ended up going to Teach for America because I just felt like it was a placeholder. I didn't know what I was meant to do. And I had always babysat and did like camp counselor and stuff, so I was really comfortable with kids, so I figured that would be fine. So I went there, and it ended up being very not fine because I was confronted with all of the um, racism and white supremacy that I had never acknowledged in the, very white supremacist white bubble that I had been raised in. And that was very rough to process, while at the same time I was with all these openly queer people who were like, you're clearly queer, like, just live your life, have a great life. And I was like, no, it doesn't mean you don't have a great life. And they were showing me that you could, but I knew it wouldn't work within the system of my family. And so, anyways, all of that to say, I ended up overdosing when I was 22. And that was a really great um, point in my life because it allowed me to have this reckoning. Like, what am I actually doing here? And what do I, like, what do I want to spend this time doing? Because I did not die. And so when I woke up, I was like, ugh, now I have to actually be here for a while because I didn't want to try to kill myself again because it was pretty humiliating to have it not work. So I have spent the last 20 years trying to sort through that. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? What is this? And spirituality, has been such a huge part of my journey, but it, I had to really take breaks from it because of the way that Christianity had been sort of, you know, perverted my relationship with God because it made me think that God was Christianity. But now I see that Christianity was using the idea of God. And, I actually think that Jesus was an extraordinary teacher and so much wisdom within that tradition. It just the way it plays out in evangelical Christianity is not for me. But so anyways, spirituality and something that I've been realizing over the past year or maybe like 3 years as I've been continuing to ask myself this question, like, what do I really like? What is my passion? What do I really care about? It's spiritual development, which in a lot of senses in this culture in this day and age, like that can kind of be summed up with mental health. So I really care about that, spirituality and mental health. And then I've been realizing that, like, I really have always loved sewing. So as I've been coming back to sewing in the past 6 months, I started out with slow stitch, which is really perfect for me because it was like very low stakes, like just sewing in a straight line, not having to know anything about um, you know fancy sewing techniques. And then I made my first quilt like a month ago, and I'm working on another two quilts now, and I've been doing the little slow stitching stuff, but then also like exposing myself to other people on social media who do this. And there is so much about mindfulness and sustainability and like taking care of ourselves and the planet, and it resonates so deeply. And I've been finding myself wanting to um, like make change things in my house into clothing items. And I remembering that 20 years ago when I was in that phase of trying to figure everything out, I was sewing a ton at that phase, clothes, which is so funny because it's not something that like I ever really acknowledged as a thing about me. But I was sewing clothes all the time. I was making all these funny outfits and I loved batik fabrics. I loved silk pieces from India. Um, I made several big blanket quilty type things. So it really was something during that phase of rebuilding that was clearly resonating. So as I'm coming into another phase of rebuilding, like coming out of, it's been 8 years since I was divorced, and I spent the first, 6 years like grieving and trying to um, get out of, do all the custody stuff and then get out of the severe debt that all of that put me into, and like build some stability financially and in my mental health. And, did the very basics of like being in 12-step programs and being in intensive psychotherapy, and now have the stability to be able to like be exploring what do I actually enjoy and to be doing more spiritual work and not just, trying to get out of depression and anxiety. And what's coming back is this sewing and making clothes, which I just think is really fun. I like, no pun intended, but to see the threads that sort of stay consistent throughout our lives. Um, And so I'm really happy to see where this is going, and um, just getting so much joy and energy from making these little things. And this may not seem like a big project, taking towels and turning them into a scarf, but there's something that's so deeply satisfying and like feels like a possibility opening for me. So, anyways, just wanted to share that. Sending you all so much love and hope you have a beautiful day, night, week, year, life. Okay, lots of love.